Good morning, everyone. I'm going to give everybody a few minutes here, a minute or so to join. My name is Mary Lynn, and I'm a full-time field education trainer in the Vancouver area. And I'm super excited this morning to be showing you guys some face framing. Good morning, everyone. Hope everybody's well this morning. I hope everybody's excited to learn face framing. All right. Well, I'm going to get started. So this morning I wanted to give you guys a visual on face framing. I think a lot of us in the salon and nowadays a lot of our clients are asking for face framing. It's pretty popular, and I feel like this is probably a really great technique to do. It's nothing too hard. It's pretty easy, and actually you can also customize the look. You don't necessarily have to follow it to the T, but it gives you a really good guidance, or you could completely, do exactly what I'm doing. So behind me here, I don't know if some of you can kind of see, but I've got the head sheets on the placement. So we're gonna kind of, I know it's a little bit from a distance, but I'm hoping you guys can see it a little bit. So we're going to kind of look at the sectioning here of this technique. And you're going to see that you have a little bit of that straighter line, a little bit of a zigzag kind of come into, I'm going to turn my mannequin here for you guys a little bit. So into this area here, you're going to kind of have that zigzag up at the top here, just like you see on the mannequin. And then we're going to have a little bit more of that kind of straighter top. And we're going to be doing some slices on each side, kind of past that like temple areas where we're going to section. And then after that, we're going to do a few slices here. We're going to go into the front area, into the fringe area, where we're actually going to be doing some weave or zigzag actually into that area to give it that kind of softer look so that you don't have that big block at the face. In the back here, as you can tell, it kind of goes a little bit of on an angle on both sides, and we just have that straight back because we're not doing anything back there. So I hope all of you can see this. Also, if there are any questions, I don't have a co-host with me today, so I will do my best to kind of take a look at the chat as I'm doing my application. So feel free to put in any comments or any questions into the chat, and I'll be more than happy to answer them as I get to them. And if there's anything else, just let me know. All right, guys. Welcome everybody who is just joining. We're going to be talking about face framing today. We're going to be teaching you guys the technique of face framing. All right. So I'm going to get started. First, I want to talk about what I'm going to use for products. So today I'm actually using our our Blondor Freelights, which is our clay-based lightener. I'm going to be doing an open air application. Now, you can also do a foil application if you'd like. This is just the way I'm choosing to do it. I wanted to, quick, easy application, something that doesn't take too long. And also I wanted something a little softer. I didn't want something too light. So this is why I'm using the Freelights. What I have mixed here is I have mixed 1 part powder to 1.5 parts liquid. I used the 20 volume Freelights developer with my powder today. She's already kind of light a little bit, so I didn't need to go too high, but you can use your 30 and 40 volume depending on how light or how much accent you really want. Okay. So if at any point in time you guys can't see me, or you need me to change my angle, please put the comment in the chat, and I will do my best to adjust so that you guys can properly see my mannequin. All right, so I'm just going to bring this down a little bit so you guys can see it a little bit better. So what I like to do here is we're kind of going to follow the slices over here. So we're going to do 3 slices to kind of create that light all the way around. So I'm going to take a nice clean section here. It doesn't have to be a super thin section because I am using my clay-based lightener, and I want a little bit of that cushion when I'm applying that lightener. So this is kind of, the thickness that I'm using. I like to give it a little bit of a comb through to make sure I have a nice smooth section here. Now, if you feel more comfortable, you can totally use your paddle. I'm probably going to use a little bit of my hand and my paddle. It's just a comfort level for me. I like to use my hands, but paddle is also really great as well. So for some of you who are more comfortable with the paddle, please do so, okay? So the important part with it is using a angled brush, which is, for me, I think it's really important because you've got a little bit better precision. And also making sure you have not too much product, but again, you also want to build your saturation, right? So we don't necessarily need to put it on too heavy at first, but we can definitely build that product. So I always start with kind of the middle here, and I start to put a pretty thick kind of layer. I'm gonna twist a little bit so you guys can hopefully see this better. So a good kind of, and can't say it, my French is coming out, guys. Analogy is that it's like an icing on a cake, right? We want to make sure that that cake is very well iced. We don't want those, and we always want to go down. We never want to go up because that makes the hair kind of stick out. So we always want to go with the grain of the hair. And I always put my brush flat, not straight yet, as I'm kind of layering that product, okay? So I kind of get that layer in little bit by little bit, and I start to kind of bring my brush up a little bit more as I'm getting closer to the root. If I were to do it like this up here, I would probably end up with a line because I'm using the flat part. So for in this part, I like it because it allows me to put a little bit more product and get that proper saturation. But as I'm getting a little closer to the root area, I like to start kind of tilting my brush a little bit more straight so that I can get in and get that precision a little better up top there, okay? So you can kind of choose how you want to kind of work the top, whether or not you want a heavier, less root showing, you want a lot of brightness towards that area. That's totally your personal preference. Some people kind of like still having that shadow of that root in there, so a little easier on the regrowth. So I'm going to go with that. This is what my client has asked for this morning, so I'm going to follow her wishes and kind of keep a little bit of that root shadow in there. Now, with that being said, if you had gone maybe a little too high in that area, afterwards, if the client feels that it's maybe a little too bright, you can always go back in and do a root shadow after you're done your pre-lightning, okay? So I like to bring it all the way down. And this is where ideally I should probably use my paddle. So I'm going to apply a little product on my paddle here. And now when you're doing the face framing, you could totally go up a little higher on the back side to kind of maximize that lightness. So when she pulls her hair back, she sees a little bit more of that brightness around the face. So what you could do is just kind of pull it a little bit and then just go in and just kind of brighten around here. And then lifts to make sure that that blend is a little better on that side. I hope all of you can see this. I know it's hard when it's on camera and you're on an angle, okay? So we've got very good saturation. And it's important with the Freelights to have that proper saturation because it is an open air technique. You want to make sure you have that good saturation, otherwise you'll have pockets and it'll create unevenness when it's lifting. So the reason I put a foil, and you're probably all wondering why I put a foil, I only put a foil because it's up against her skin. So I want to be able to protect that skin so that that lightener isn't directly on the skin. But then from this point on, I can just layer on top, and then that way I'm not worried about any irritation to the skin. Okay. All right, so we're gonna move on to the next one here. So I'm gonna take one more section and leave that one kind of pinned out of the way. And I'm going to give it a nice clean brush again. Do any of you do a lot of face framing techniques in the salon? If you do, put some comments in the chat. Let me know what your favorite thing is to do. What kind of, techniques you use. Do you use it in a foil? Do you freehand? So again, I'm just kind of building up that product a little bit here and working my way down, giving it a nice, good saturation. I know that I really love the face framing. I know a lot of people are doing it and just loving having that brightness around their face, but don't necessarily want everything to be light, but they kind of like that light around the face. So I feel like face framing has really, been very popular for a lot of people. And, it's nice to learn new techniques because sometimes we just get in a bit of a rut and, keep doing the same thing all the time. So I think it's kind of fun to learn some new ways. And this way it's pretty cool and it's pretty easy. It can be a quick, easy service in the salon if, you weren't booked for that service and a client just said, hey, would you have time to do some face framing today? I'd like some brightness around my face. This is an easy service for you to do. Okay, so as you guys can tell, I've got a good saturation all the way through. And then I just let it go, okay? Good morning, hello. Thanks for joining, everyone. All right, so we're gonna move on to our last piece on this side here. So again, we're gonna give it just a quick comb through, make it nice and clean. And then we're gonna start by building that product again. And I don't know if any of you use an angle brush, but honestly, for balayage or anything like this, especially when you're trying to do some blending, being that it's on an angle, I find it a little easier to be a little bit more precise with my blending without having to back comb and causing that extra step in the process. And also by having your lightener be the right consistency, it makes a really big difference in your application, especially when you're trying to kind of blend and not cause any lines or anything. Please see the section 1 again. You want to see, sorry Rohan, you want to see which section? I don't know if you can see it a little bit better. So this is where we're doing the 3 slices, which is this one right here. We've got 3 slices going this way on an angle. Starts from behind the ear to the temple is where that first section is. Let me know if that answers your question. All right, so I'm just gonna go in here and start to kind of blend a little bit towards that zigzag that I created when I sectioned her. And then I'm gonna kind of get up in here a little bit, just softly depositing that color, because if you put any clumps kind of towards this area, you're gonna leave a little bit of that demarcation line, right? So we want to have that soft application of color towards the blending area, and then we want that heavier saturation towards the bottom, okay? So we're just gonna go in and keep saturating here. I'm gonna lift and kind of go in and add a little bit more on this side here to maximize that brightness, okay? And then again, I'm gonna kind of touch just a little bit towards the face to make sure that I'm maximizing that lightness. It's always easier to go back in, guys, after if the client finds that maybe it's a little too bright around her face, and kind of do a, kind of a root melt to soften that. It's a lot easier than going back in and having to re-lighten again, okay? So consultation is huge at this point, because you want to make sure that you don't have to do that. You want to be able to just, do the service the one time, but sometimes there's that miscommunication with clients. So we just want to make sure that we're clear. And if you did go a little too light, then there's always the option for a little bit of that root melt. Okay, so we're going to do the next side. So we're going to do the same thing we did on the other side. So I'm going to try to work through this a little faster. So again, we're going to do the 3 sections. Okay. And I'm hoping you guys can see this properly. All right. So again, I'm going to build that product little bit by little bit. And we always want to do kind of a little bit of that circular motion. It kind of gives you a little bit of that feathering and gets you to deposit that color without, putting too much product all in one place. Okay, and see how I'm slowly working that product up, but still keeping a saturation, because I still want it to lift, but I don't want it to be too heavy. All right, so I'm just gonna go in and keep kind of blending that a little bit more and just slowly working that up to here. Okay, so I'm gonna go to the other side before I go too far down and start working that product on the opposite side here to kind of maximize that brightness around the face. And I hope you guys can see this as I'm doing this. Okay, and then I'm gonna go around the face a little bit here to make sure she's nice and bright. Okay. And then I'm just gonna keep making sure that saturation is nice and good. And then my blending is on point. Okay, and then I'm gonna follow through with saturating those ends and making sure I've got a good saturation all the way through. Now with Freelights, guys, even though yes, it is a lightener, so it's very important that at the end of the day, we still remember that it's a lightener, right? Now, being an open air technique, it's not like using our Blondor Multi-Blonde, where I'm maybe running every 5 to 10 minutes to check on my lightener. With the Blondor Freelights, being open air, it's a little bit more gentle. So you still want to monitor it and keep your eye on it, but you don't necessarily have to be running every 5 minutes to keep an eye on it. You also, don't want to be scraping and wiping the product too often, because, you want to keep that proper saturation so that it gives the lift, because being open air, the product is drying out on the outside and staying moist on the inside. So if we wipe too much of it, we're going to be leaving those pockets open, which may not lift properly in those areas, right? So you definitely want to keep an eye on it, but you don't necessarily have to be running every 5 minutes. But at the end of the day, it is lightener. So we have to make sure that it is the proper canvas for a lightening service, okay? If you are using it in a foil with a, multi-blonde powder or a Blondor Plex, we definitely want to be, keeping a closer eye on it and making sure that the hair isn't compromised or anything like that. And as well with this, if you feel that the hair is compromised or may not be able to handle any lightener, we have to be careful with that. The hair around the face is the finest hair on our heads, so we want to make sure that we are taking care of it as we are doing any type of lightening service. All right, just making sure that I get that blend here. right. And we're gonna follow it all the way through to the end and then just drop it, okay? I always keep a towel because, like I said, I like to work with my hands. I find it a little easier for myself. Do any of you work with your hands or prefer to use the paddle? You can put the comments in the chat. I would love to hear what you guys do when you are doing your hand painting. This one is a little bit of a thinner section here, so we're gonna kind of work with it a little bit. I was a little heavy on my zigzag here this morning. I also, at the end, I'm gonna show you guys the finished product. I have a mannequin that I've already done. And so I'll be able to show you guys exactly what it looks like, what my version of face framing is. I chose a softer approach, just not to be too bold, but still give you that contrast and kind of that brightness around the face, something a little bit softer. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't make it bolder or more apparent. It just depends on your client and kind of where you want to go with it. Okay, so I'm just blending on both sides here. And then saturation all the way to the bottom. Okay. All right, so we're gonna move on to the front of the head here. And I'm gonna twist this so you guys can see it. All right. All right. So I hope you guys can see this properly. So we're going to do this in two sections. So I'm actually going to just split that kind of down the middle here and put that one to the side and brush this through. Now, a lot of you may ask how far you can go at the front here. General rule of thumb is when you put your comb down and you see where the comb kind of lifts up, and I'm going to try to twist this a little bit and show you guys. Right, if you're holding it right at the hairline, you lay that. See how my comb kind of lifts at this point? This is kind of where I guided the beginning of my face framing. That doesn't mean that it has to be a rule of thumb. This could be something that your client wants to go bolder and deeper with it. That's totally something you guys can discuss. Now, the other thing we have to, take in consideration at this point, this mannequin has beautiful long hair at the front, but, what happens to those clients who want face framing, but have a fringe or have, a shag or any of those haircuts that have a lot of shorter pieces? This is really important that at that point it's part of your consultation and also part of how you're mapping your application, okay? We always want to take that in consideration, how we're going to do it. Now, it's easy with her because she has the length, but in the, fact that someone has a shag or has, blunt fringe or, a long curtain bang, we have to kind of think of that before we go in and do our application. So I think it's really important for people to really take a step back for a minute and think how they're going to be doing their application prior to starting, okay? So I've got my piece here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and zigzag a piece, okay? I don't know, I'm going to turn her because I think she's a little bit out of, I'm going to turn her even more. Okay, so I hope you guys can see this, but we've got a nice zigzag here, okay? I'm going to kind of pin this out of the way a little bit for now, and then I'll come back at my next section, okay? So, same thing. We're gonna kind of give it a quick comb through, and we're gonna do the same thing. We're going to saturate and follow the same thing that we did on the two side sections, okay? Now, with this one, I highly recommend that we do this side, okay? We did it on the other sides, but this is, if she's wearing her hair back, she wants to be bright. So you can start with doing this side if it's a little easier for you when you're painting. So I'm just gonna get a little bit of that product kind of worked up in here. And then I'm gonna go in and just softly blend that because I don't want her to have a big block at the face here. So I just wanna get that softness. And then I'm gonna come back to this side and then I'm gonna continue saturating that product, okay? Just making sure there's no questions here in the chat. And then we really want to make sure that we get in here and just softly not touch our mannequin or our client's skin. And then we're going to get back into here and really saturate and make sure that product is in there nice and good. All the way through. Okay. And I'm going to put a foil again to protect her skin, okay? Perfect. All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. All right, so we're gonna move on to the next one here. And so we're gonna do another zigzag, okay? Well, that wasn't a very good one. Let's try that again. All right, so here we go. Now, a lot of people, when I teach this class, they want to weave. Well, we're not weaving. We actually want the zigzag formation to kind of give it that softness. So we have to make sure that we're paying attention to that because a lot of people are like, oh, yes, I get it. And then when they go in, they're like, oh, my goodness, I keep weaving. So it's important that we go back in and we actually get the zigzag pattern and not just a weave. To really kind of create that softness at the front. Okay. So I'm building the back again, especially because she might be wearing her hair down at some point and we don't want it to be blocky. And then we're going to go back into the other side and really build that saturation here again and the softness. Okay. Guys, if there's any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I'm more than happy to answer them for you. Okay, so see, we're just working on that blending at the top here, but still with a very good saturation, just not too heavy. And then we deposit that again, okay? All right, so let's move on to the next one. I'm gonna finish this last piece here. And then a lot of you may ask, okay, well, what do we do when we get to the top here? Because we've got that separation. We've also got that straight line down here. So what we wanna do when we get to the top here is, again, we're gonna work that saturation. Again, just kind of starting to apply that product, okay? And then we're gonna keep building it and we're gonna go to the other side as well, if that's what your client wants. My client wants to be nice and bright around there and she will be wearing her hair back. So I really wanna take that into consideration when I'm applying my face framing. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of go in there, just softly blend that, okay? And then I'm gonna go back to here and keep working slowly to the top here because here I don't have the zigzag to kind of soften it. So I really wanna make sure that I'm taking the time to blend and not have those lines. I really want that soft transition, okay? Now, if you wanted to, you can go right to the root. It all depends on what your client is looking for. If you are going to the root, maybe a little softer with that zigzag. But my client here didn't want that really, really heavy blonde. So at the very root. So I'm just making sure that I keep that in mind. Okay, so then I'm just gonna go in and make sure my saturation is on point down here. And then I'm going all the way to the bottom here. Okay. Okay, now processing time with our Freelights developer is up to 50 minutes. We do not recommend any heat. You want to just let it air dry or air process. And you want to definitely still be keeping an eye on it. And then when it's ready, then you go ahead and rinse and then tone. Okay. So we did the two sides and then we would do both front. We are getting a little short in time, so I want to be able to show you guys also my finished mannequin and what I have done. So I won't do the other side, but just so you know, we would be doing the same thing on this side. We would be, again, same thing. We would be starting from that bottom point, doing our zigzag, and then doing the 3 zigzags here, and then letting her process, and then toning her at the end. Now you can tone her with, Colliston Perfect, or you can tone her with Color Touch or Illumina. So the 3 are very good options for toning. If you are toning with your Colliston Perfect, we recommend that you use our pastel developer, a 1:2 mixing ratio. And if you are using our Illumina for toning as well, we recommend either our pastel developer, or you can use our Color Touch developer at a 1:2 mixing ratio. And then with our Color Touch, it's a 1:2 mixing ratio as well. So I'm going to show you guys my finished product here. Give me 1 second here to get it. All right, so this is my finished mannequin, guys. What I did here is I toned her with Color Touch. I hope you guys can see her properly here. I toned her with Color Touch. I did a 1:2 mixing ratio, and I toned her with 916, which is our level 9 stroke ash violet. So half and half. With 7 stroke 97, which is our level 7 cendré brown, which is our warm brown. I really wanted her to have a soft, contrast to the nice warm brown that she has back here. I wanted to them to complement each other and not be too overpowering, but I really wanted to maximize that lightness around her face and give her that beautiful kind of blonde softness around the face. I hope all of you can see this, right? And then when she pulls her hair back, she's got that nice softness, because I kind of was a little bit softer on the root area to not be too harsh. And so when she wears her hair back too, it's a little softer, but then she's really maximizing that blonde around the face. I hope all of you can see this. So it's a really nice, easy way to do a beautiful, soft face framing and really complement that darker color, or, if you've got a natural color in there, whatever the case may be. So a question in the chat, can you repeat the toner you used? Yes, of course. So I used Color Touch, our demi-permanent color. I used 1 part 9 stroke 16 with 1 part 7 stroke 97, a 1:2 mixing ratio with our 1.9% developer for 10 minutes. Okay, and what I used on her to lighten her was also the Freelights, and I did Freelights Blondor from Freelights, and I did our 30 volume because she was like a level 7, and I wanted to kind of, you know, get it light enough to give it that contrast. And I wanted to really maintain that, you know, beige tone. And I love the 9/7s or the 7/1s in the Color Touch portfolio. With the stroke, with the 9-stroke 1/6, gives you that beautiful kind of beigey, J-Lo kind of toner. And so that's kind of where my inspiration for this one was. You're welcome. Awesome, guys. Well, if there's any questions, like I said, please feel free to put them in the chat. I want to thank everybody for joining me today on this face framing technique. I hope that you guys learned something. If you guys need, you know, if you have any questions or you guys would like the head sheets for the application, please feel free to reach out on my Instagram handle, which is Mary Lynn, or hairby_Mary Lynn. And that's my Instagram handle. So you guys can reach out to me that way. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. And if there's anything I can help with, please feel free to connect. All right, guys. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Have a wonderful day and take care. Bye now.